Roboute Guilliman was never meant to be loved. He was meant to function. That truth defines everything about him. From the moment his incubation pod burned through the skies of Macragge, to the moment his throat was opened by Fulgrim's poisoned blade. He is not the most charismatic Primarch. He is not the most terrifying. He is not the most tragic in the romantic sense. But Guilliman is the most dangerous kind of hero Warhammer 40,000 has ever produced, one who builds systems that outlive gods. When the Emperor created the Primarchs, he did not simply craft generals. He created answers to specific problems. Roboute Guilliman was the answer to entropy. He was order made flesh. Not the brittle order of tyranny, but the grinding, administrative, mercilessly logical order required to keep a million worlds functioning. When chaos whispers, Guilliman calculates. When others rage, he legislates. And that is precisely why his absence broke the Imperium more thoroughly than Horus ever did. Before he was a Primarch. Before he was a symbol, Guilliman was a ruler. He landed on Macragge, a world already steeped in harsh discipline and martial pride, but divided by oligarchs, technocrats, and endless low-grade wars. What set Guilliman apart from the beginning was not simply his superhuman ability, but his instinct to govern. He did not merely conquer. He reorganized. He identified supply inefficiencies, legal inconsistencies, feudal redundancies. He unified Macragge, not through terror, but through reform, backed by unstoppable force. The people followed him not because he was strong, but because life was better when he ruled. That distinction matters. When the Emperor arrived, Guilliman did not kneel as a supplicant, nor did he rebel in wounded pride. He negotiated. He presented Ultramar not as a conquered prize, but as a functioning empire, ready for compliance. This was unprecedented. By the time Guilliman took command of the 13th Legion, they were already formidable. Under him, they became something new. The Ultramarines were not merely warriors. They were administrators in power armor, logisticians with bolters, diplomats who could annihilate you if talks failed. During the Great Crusade, other legions burned paths through the galaxy. Guilliman stabilized them. Worlds conquered by the Ultramarines did not fall into rebellion the moment compliance fleets departed. They produced, they tithed, they endured. This is where resentment began. Other Primarchs saw Ultramar's 500 worlds and whispered empire building. They were not wrong. Guilliman believed the Imperium could last. He believed systems mattered. He believed the Great Crusade was not just about victory, but sustainability. This belief put him at odds with brothers who lived for war alone. When Horus fell, Guilliman did not know at first. The word-bearers ensured that. The betrayal at Calth was not just a battle. It was a strategic masterpiece of spite. It shattered Guilliman's ability to reach Terra. It turned Ultramar into a war zone. It forced Guilliman into a regional war while the Imperium burned. What followed is often misunderstood. Guilliman did not hesitate. He did not waver. He attempted to create Imperium Secundus, not out of ambition, but contingency. He believed Terra might already be lost. He believed humanity required a surviving core of lawful governance. This is crucial. Imperium Secundus was not treason. It was Guilliman doing what he always does, ensuring continuity of civilization even in worst-case scenarios. When the truth of Terra's survival emerged, Guilliman dissolved Secundus without protest, no rebellion, no justification, no ego. He returned to the Imperium and took up the burden of reconstruction after the siege of Terra, and this is where the seeds of tragedy truly take root. With the Emperor entombed on the Golden Throne, Guilliman became Lord Commander of the Imperium in all but name. He saw the danger immediately. The legions had nearly destroyed humanity. The concentration of power was unsustainable. The Codex Astartes was not a punishment. It was a safeguard. Guilliman did not break the legions because he feared his brothers. He broke them because he understood institutions outlive individuals. The Codex was flexible, modular, adaptable, and like Guilliman himself, it would later be misunderstood, ossified, and weaponized by lesser minds. What followed was the Great Scouring, a brutal purging of traitor remnants. And then came Fulgrim. The duel at the Sala is not remembered for heroism. It is remembered for finality. Fulgrim did not seek to kill Guilliman quickly. He sought to prove a point. The poisoned blade cut Guilliman's throat and robbed the Imperium of its greatest stabilizing force in a single moment. There was no last speech, no glorious death. Guilliman was entombed in stasis, frozen between life and death, preserved like a relic, and the Imperium began to rot. This is Guilliman's true fall, not defeat, not betrayal, absence. For 10,000 years, the Imperium worshipped a corpse emperor and venerated a silent primarch. They turned Guilliman into a statue while violating everything he stood for. The Codex became scripture, bureaucracy calcified into dogma, innovation became heresy. The Imperium survived, but it did not live, and Guilliman slept through all of it. If you're still with me here, if you've followed Guilliman through logic, compromise, and sacrifice, pause for a moment and ask yourself this, and drop it in the comments without breaking immersion. Would the Imperium have fallen into religious tyranny if Guilliman had lived? Or was this decay inevitable the moment the Emperor was bound to the throne? Because that question defines what comes next. When Guilliman wakes, he does not return to his Imperium. He returns to a nightmare of his own legacy, distorted beyond recognition, and that is where the rise truly begins. Roboute Guilliman awakens into failure. Not his own, but total civilizational failure. The first thing he feels is pain. Not physical alone, though the armor of fate keeps him alive by threading agony through every breath. The pain is conceptual. He sees what the Imperium has become. And for the first time since his creation, Guilliman understands despair. He is resurrected not by faith, not by destiny, but by necessity. Belisarius Cawl does not kneel to Guilliman as a god. He presents him as a solution. Yvraine does not resurrect Guilliman out of loyalty to humanity. She does it because the galaxy is breaking, and even the Eldari understand that entropy must sometimes be delayed by order. The Emperor's sword is placed in Guilliman's hand, not as a symbol of divine right, but as a weapon against inevitability, and Guilliman returns not as a conqueror, but as a man out of time. The Imperium he wakes to is unrecognizable, not merely decayed, but inverted. Where Guilliman built secular governance, he finds religious fanaticism. Where he valued flexibility, he finds ossified doctrine. Where the Emperor demanded reason, the Imperium demands faith. He is declared Imperial Regent, not because he seeks power, but because there is no one left who understands how power is supposed to work. His first journey to Terra is not triumphant. It is a descent into madness. The High Lords scheme like petty nobles. The Administratum drowns worlds in paperwork while entire sectors starve. The ecclesiarchy has replaced the emperor's vision with worship, so absolute it would have disgusted him. Guilliman sees it immediately. The Imperium no longer serves humanity. Humanity is sacrificed daily to preserve the Imperium's shape, and Guilliman understands something terrifying. The Emperor did not plan for this. The most devastating moment of Guilliman's return is not battle. It is his audience with the Emperor. The truth of that meeting is fragmented, contradictory, and deliberately obscured. But Guilliman leaves it changed. He does not hear reassurance. He does not receive validation. What he receives is confirmation that the Emperor is no longer fully present, if he ever was. The dream of unity is gone. The Imperium is now a machine powered by suffering, and Guilliman is its reluctant operator. He launches the Indomitus Crusade not as a glorious reconquest, but as emergency triage. The Great Rift has split the galaxy in half. The Astronomicon falters. Worlds are isolated, burning, screaming into the void. Guilliman does not promise salvation. He promises survival. Primaris Space Marines are unleashed, not as replacements, but as reinforcements. Cawl's long-gestating answer to stagnation. And Guilliman tolerates them, despite knowing the precedent they set. Because Guilliman understands something the Imperium has forgotten. Perfection is irrelevant. Functionality is everything. Where Guilliman walks, old systems break. He rewrites logistics chains mid-war. He strips planetary governors of power without ceremony. He executes traitors and incompetents with equal efficiency. And yet, he compromises. He allows the ecclesiarchy to continue. He allows the Inquisition to exist. He does not tear the Imperium down because he knows it would not survive reconstruction. This is Guilliman's greatest torment. He is not restoring the Imperium he loved. He is managing the Imperium he despises. The Emperor's sword burns demons from existence, not merely killing them, but erasing their essence, and Guilliman wields it not with joy, but obligation. He is now a weapon against chaos that chaos understands. This makes him a target. Traitor Primarchs do not see Guilliman as a rival. They see him as a mistake corrected too late. Mortarion seeks to break him not physically, but ideologically. Fulgrim still mocks the wound he left behind. Lorgar watches and waits, because Guilliman represents the ultimate refutation of faith-driven empire. And Guilliman knows they are right to fear him, because Guilliman is no longer fighting to win. He is fighting to delay extinction. The Codex Astartes is revised, not abandoned, revised. This alone tells you who Guilliman has become. He no longer believes in static solutions. He believes in controlled adaptation. The Ultramarines no longer represent perfection. They represent resilience, and Guilliman no longer sees himself as a hero. He sees himself as a custodian of a corpse that refuses to die. There is no glory in Guilliman's rise. There is only endurance. He does not believe the Imperium is good. He believes it is necessary. And that belief places him in direct conflict with almost every faction he nominally commands. The ecclesiarchy worships him while undermining him. The High Lords obey him while plotting. The Mechanicus reveres Cawl and fears Guilliman. The Inquisition watches him for signs of heresy, and Guilliman allows it all, because paranoia is now a structural necessity, and Guilliman understands systems better than anyone alive. If Horus was the greatest traitor, Guilliman is the greatest burden-bearer. He does not rage against fate like Angron. He does not hide from it like Corax. He does not transcend it like Vulcan. He shoulders it. And that is why Guilliman is the Imperium's greatest hero. Not because he is noble, not because he is just, but because he is willing to rule something broken without pretending it can be fixed. The tragedy is this. Guilliman is winning. He is stabilizing sectors. He is reclaiming worlds. He is rebuilding supply lines. He is holding the galaxy together. But every victory cements the Imperium further into the form he hates. And Guilliman knows it. The rise of Roboute Guilliman is not the return of hope. It is the prolonging of the end. And Guilliman will bear that responsibility until either the galaxy collapses, or he finally admits that some systems are too corrupt to save. And when that moment comes, the Imperium will face a choice more terrifying than Horus ever offered. Because Guilliman does not fall to chaos. He may one day reject the Imperium itself. And if that happens, the galaxy will burn, not from betrayal, but from correction. There is a half of the galaxy Roboute Guilliman cannot save, not yet, not fully. Imperium. Nihilus exists beyond logistics, beyond reliable astropathy, beyond the reach of clean governance. It is what the Imperium becomes when systems fail completely. Worlds rule themselves or die. Warlords replace governors. Faith replaces law because faith is faster when order collapses. Guilliman understands Nihilus better than anyone else because it represents the nightmare he always planned against. It is entropy unchained, and Guilliman cannot simply crusade it away. The Indomitus Crusade stabilizes, but it does not heal. It plugs wounds while the patient continues to bleed. The truth Guilliman rarely voices is this. The Imperium no longer functions as a single empire. It is a collection of survival states loosely orbiting Terra. And Guilliman is not emperor. He is regent, a steward of a throne whose occupant cannot rule. This distinction matters more than any battle. Guilliman's greatest enemy is not chaos. It is scale. No individual, Primarch or otherwise, can govern 1,000,000 worlds. And Guilliman knows it. He wrote treatises on delegation, redundancy, and decentralization. But the Imperium rejected those lessons long ago. It chose dogma over adaptability. And now Guilliman is forced to rule through institutions that sabotage him simply by existing. When the lion returns, the fracture becomes inevitable. Lionel Janssen is not Guilliman's opposite in temperament, but he is his opposite in philosophy. The lion believes loyalty is personal. Guilliman believes loyalty is systemic. The lion trusts secrecy. Guilliman trusts transparency where possible. Their reunion is not a triumph of brotherhood. It is the reintroduction of competing solutions to an unsolvable problem. Both are right, and that is what makes it dangerous. The lion moves through Nihilus as a knight-errant, dispensing justice directly. Guilliman builds frameworks that may never reach those worlds. This is not rivalry. This is divergence. And Guilliman understands what it implies. If more Primarchs return, the Imperium will not unify. It will fracture along ideological lines. Horus broke the Imperium through rebellion. Guilliman may see it break through incompatible salvation. This is the ultimate irony. Guilliman spent his life preventing civil war, and now he stands at the center of a future where civil war may be the only path to evolution. The Emperor's sword burns in his hand, and Guilliman increasingly understands what it represents. Not authority, not legitimacy, finality. The blade does not just kill demons, it ends narratives. It is a tool of correction, not conquest. And Guilliman begins to wield it, not just against enemies, but against ideas. He culls institutions quietly. He sidelines dogmatic commanders. He empowers pragmatic ones, regardless of orthodoxy. He does not announce reforms. He implements them in the shadows. This is not tyranny. It is necessity, and Guilliman hates that he is good at it. The ecclesiarchy still worships him, but Guilliman no longer corrects them. He allows the lie to persist because faith stabilizes populations faster than truth. This alone would horrify the man he used to be. The Codex Astartes continues to evolve, not as a book, but as a philosophy, adaptability over purity, function over tradition. Guilliman does not preach this. He enforces it by example, and Space Marines follow, not because they agree, but because it works, and slowly, quietly, Guilliman becomes something unprecedented. Not a god, not a hero, not even a ruler. He becomes a living failsafe, a final measure against total collapse. The Imperium survives because Guilliman exists, and that realization terrifies him more than chaos ever could. Because it means the Imperium has learned nothing. It still relies on singular figures. It still mistakes individuals for solutions. And Guilliman knows how that story ends. He lived through it once. There will come a moment, Guilliman sees it coming, when he must choose. Not between chaos and the Imperium. That choice is easy, but between preserving a decaying system indefinitely or allowing it to break so something else can emerge. That decision will define the fate of humanity more than Horus ever did. If Guilliman falls, the Imperium may finally die. If Guilliman succeeds too well, the Imperium may never change. And Guilliman understands the cruel truth of his own legend. He is not the Imperium's greatest hero, because he saves it. He is its greatest hero, because he understands that saving it may be the worst possible outcome. And still, despite everything, he fights on. Not for victory, not for faith, not even for the Emperor, but for humanity's right to choose its future, even if that future rejects everything Guilliman built. And that is why Roboute Guilliman is dangerous. Because he does not believe the Imperium is sacred. He believes it is provisional. And when the day comes that it must be replaced, Guilliman will not hesitate. And when that day comes, the galaxy will learn the final lesson Guilliman was created to teach. Order is not eternal. Survival is not virtue. And even heroes must eventually make themselves obsolete.